Okay, on your question, you mentioned that you didn't understand number 2. I wanted to start by going over number 1 and then talk about number 2, just to make sure you got the distance formula okay, because we're going to be using the distance formula for number 2. So number 1, it says find the distance between the points -4, 6 and 8, -12. Now that's, if we put the points on top of each other, that really helps us out a lot. Let's find out the difference between each point. To do that, difference means subtract, so we're going to minus the 2. So -4 minus 8 is -12. And 6 minus a -12 is 18. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm subtracting them, okay, and getting these answers. Once they're subtracted, then I need to square them, okay. So -12 squared is 144. So now we're going to square the answers, and 18 squared is 324. Okay, once we have that done, we add them together, and we get 468. I'm doing this on a calculator just to make sure I get the right numbers. And we're going to take the square root of that number. Okay, so the square root of 468 is 21.63333 and stuff. You can see what it is right there. So with that in mind, the answer, it says 2 decimal places, 21.63. Okay, so that's how you find the distance between 2 points. Okay, if we were to check that and say, all right, does that seem right? Because that's important to check and see if it seems right. We would get our graph and say, all right, we have a point -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, +6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we have 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and down 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, way down here. Does that seem about right? Yes, I would say that's probably around 21 squares away. So you can check to see if it looks right, okay? With that in mind, now we've got a triangle here, and we're trying to find out the distance between these points, okay? We use the same formula. We need to take, x minus x, so the second x or first x, doesn't matter which, and square it, and then add that to y, and I'm just labeling them y2, y1, x2, x1 because there's 2 of them, so it just shows you do them both and you square that, and then that equals your length. I'm just going to put L squared. Okay, so you take the square root of everything and that gives you your answer. So let's look at this one. We have x2 minus x1. Doesn't matter which one's which. What's -3 minus a -3? That's 0. Okay, so that's our x's, and then we're just going to square it, because see, we square the answer. Now we want to find out the difference between the y's. From 6 to 2, the difference is 4, right? It's 6 minus 2 is 4. So that's y2 minus y1, 6 minus 2. Doesn't matter, like I said, which order. And then we'll square that one, and that equals the squared length. Okay? So let's solve for it, and we get 16. Okay? That's 0 squared, nothing there, and then 4 squared is 16, so the length squared is 16. That tells me the length is 4. Okay, so the length of this line is exactly 4. Well, how do you find the perimeter? You find the length of each line and add them together. So now let's find the length of this line. -3 to 3. Okay, so 3 minus a -3, that would be 6 squared plus y minus y, so 2 minus 2 is 0 squared, and we're left with 36. Square root of 36 is 6. Okay, so we know the length of this line is exactly 6 units. Now, there's two ways to get that last one. We can just do the length formula again, or we can, we can assume it's a right triangle, being as the y's and the x's remain the same. Okay, so mathematically, we could prove that's a right triangle and say, all right, Pythagorean theorem, this squared plus this squared equals this squared. But we don't want, we're going to just keep on using the distance formula. Okay, so my two x's, 3 minus 3 is 6, or 3 minus a negative 3, excuse me. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. And it doesn't matter what direction you go in, or even if you have that. And then you're left with 6 squared plus, 6 squared plus 4 squared. Sorry, I should have just written it. 36 plus 4 squared is 16. Now look what happened here. 6 squared plus 4 squared. Okay, so we're still doing the Pythagorean theorem even though we're doing the distance formula. Okay, well, what's 36 plus 16? That would be 52. And what's the square root of 52? Let me do it on the calculator and see. Square root of 52 is 7.2, and we're rounding to 2 decimal places, so 1. Okay, so now we have the length of each side, and the question comes up, what's the perimeter? The perimeter is adding up all the sides. So 6 plus 4 is 10. 10 plus 7.21 is 17.21. That's the perimeter, okay? 17.21. So that's how you go through and you find the distance and stuff like that. You just say, okay, x minus x. Now with that in mind, I wanted to look at the next question just to make sure we're okay. Okay, so like number 3. This one's a little harder to see, so I'm going to zoom in. Find the length of the diagonal XU. Okay, so if we zoom as far in as we can so you can see better, XU is going to be a line from here to here. Okay, XU. Now, we've got to figure out where that is. Okay, if we look at these points, okay, we can say, hey, both of those are right on the 2, right? See how I'm getting the x2 right here, negative 2, excuse me. So I know that u is negative 2, comma, and where are we at? It's 7. Okay, u is negative 2, 7. Okay, and we want to know how long xu is, the line here between the two. What are my coordinates for x? Okay, x looks to be about 2, comma 2. So we have 2, comma 2 and negative 2, comma 7. With that in mind, let's go ahead and find the difference between the x's and the y's. The difference between x is 4. That's 2 minus a negative 2 is 4. And we're going to square that plus, we don't need the comma, square that plus the difference in the y's, that would be negative 5 or 5. Difference, it doesn't matter if it's a positive number. So 7 minus 2 is 5. So we're going to have 5 squared. And the reason why that doesn't matter is if you have 5 squared or negative 5 squared, you'll still get 25. It doesn't matter, then the negative disappears in the square. So with that, let's solve that. We get 16 plus 25, and then that brings us to 41, 41. 16 plus 25 is 41. And the square root of 41 is 6 6.40. And 3 too. I mean, you can see it just kind of goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. So 6.40 is the answer. So that's how you're doing this. You're trying to find the distance between points, and like in this one, you just got to find out the coordinates for the points, and then find the difference in x's. So one of the x's minus the other x, doesn't matter which order. You're going to square that answer, and then add it to the y's. Again, doesn't matter the order. And then that equals, something over here. I'm just going to call it z squared, okay? Or the distance, we'll say d squared for distance. So you just take the square root of that, and that tells you your distance, okay? So hopefully that helps. That gives you an idea. When you get to the midpoint, you do the same thing, but you divide everything. So when you're finding midpoint here, you would do the same thing, only you would divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, and so on. Okay? I hope this helps. Let me know if not. If not, I will go back through and find, what's confusing you. Or, send me an email saying this is what's confusing me, and I'll be more than happy to help.